Well, I've made it to Three Oaks, even though it is sort of a nasty rainy day. And who meets me here at the steps? Mr. Garry Lange.
It's nice to see you, Richard. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Welcome to what I consider the nicest building within 100 miles.
Yeah.
It is Mr. Warren's first office building, and it was built in 1905. And Mr. Warren made zillions of dollars in the featherbone industry. And if you don't know the name Warren, you might know Warren Dunes State Park or Warren Woods. He set that land aside for a state park. And he was buddies with Teddy Roosevelt. And when Teddy was getting the national parks put in place, Mr. Warren thought it was a great idea, and so he gave all that land that was Warren Dunes to the state, and also Warren Woods, the 80-acre tract on Warren Woods Road. And he built this in 1905, and this was the first office building for the Featherbone Company. And the Featherbone, the invention was, he took a turkey feather, split the quill, removed the pith, and wrapped it in thread, and made a material that replaced whalebone, replaced whalebone in women's clothing, corsets, bustles, girdles, high collars, stays. And also, there weren't any automobiles then, and so it made the best buggy whips. And so he had whip factories as well. But this was his first office building from 1905 to 1928. And by 1928, he had offices in Philadelphia, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Boston, Paris, London, worldwide. And he was very wealthy and very generous, and this was a company town for a lot of years. And I was a paper boy in town. I used to buy my baseball cards at different stores with my brothers in town, and we amassed a little bit of an interest in the game. And 50-some years later, I approached the library about telling some stories in a room that they had vacant upstairs, and they agreed to it. And so I'm just thrilled to be part of this building. Come on upstairs and I'll show you the biggest little baseball museum.
Thank you.
There are really three viable museums in town, and one of them is the Dewey Cannon Trading Company and Three Oaks Bicycle Museum. It's located, it's just a 2-minute walk out the front of the building. You walk between the Vickers Theater and the tracks till you see the cannon, then you turn left. Fabulous bicycle museum by area bicycle guru Brian Volsdorf.
And I've been in there, and I've ridden a lot of their routes, so yes, excellent.
It's terrific. And then located a 2-minute walk behind this building is the Region of Three Oaks Museum. You just go out the back door through our lot, turn right, then left into the next parking lot. The museum's on the left. I have QR codes in this building, on this wall, as you can see, that direct you to their Facebook pages to give you their hours. Well, Richard, thank you for signing in. And not everybody signs in, but I asked them to when they show up. And we opened in mid-April, and in just a few short months, you are, I think if I get 20 more signatures, I'll be at 1,000.
Excellent.
Which is a pretty nice number for a town of our size. We have a lot of visitors. And I put this room together thinking about my own interest in baseball, knowing that the game has changed a bit, particularly for the young people. And so I've been a fan and a student of the game since I was a kid. And I amassed some things. I like to tell stories, and so this room tells a lot of stories. Might I say, too, that your signature on this sheet joins the signature of Denny McLean, who was here in June and did a presentation and an autograph show, and Ron Reed, who graduated from LaPorte High School, was a slicer in 1961, was here just a couple weeks ago with his wife and visited. And
Now, he
really
played football and...
He played with the Detroit Pistons as well.
Did he really?
Basketball.
Wow.
Yep. And he was the leading rebounder for a number of years at Notre Dame, had the rebounding record.
Wow.
Fabulous athlete, but he was here and he's going to come back. He's usually back once a year. But aside from that, the people that I was hoping would enjoy this room, they are enjoying it. It's people that are of all ages, but particularly the baby boom generation comes in here and they'll see a mitt that was like the one that they had, or like the one that they bought their son, or like that their father might have had, and they just come in the room and reminisce. And there are many stories that are told in the room. I've also used QR codes in here for the younger generation that are the non-readers. They just like to scan and look at the video, but I have some real nice videos as well. I start out really with the town teams, because every town had a team at the early part of last century. And here's a picture of the 1910 Three Oaks Greens. And this is a 1911 picture that shows a full grandstand. And this field was just behind this building. And this is a Featherbone building, part of the complex. And there were several buildings in that complex. But as you can see, the bleachers are full of people. There's a couple people in the catbird seats up on top of the building. And it's hard to see, but there's a train car behind this grandstand. There are people inside the train car and on top of the train car watching the game as well. But people worked during the week. Saturday they did chores, and most of them worked at the Featherbone. Saturday they did chores at the house. Sunday they went to church, had dinner, and then went out to watch their town team play. And in Three Oaks, it was the Greens. In Lakeside, it was the Aces. That's a 1908 picture of the Lakeside Aces. And in New Troy, it was the New Troy Grays. And that picture was taken around 1920. Every picture tells a story. There also is a small exhibit on the House of David baseball team. And some QR codes that show them playing their Pepper game. The Women's Baseball League is also featured in this museum.
I see you have quite a baseball card collection. How long have you been doing this, Gary?
Well, I have four brothers, and we started buying them at Canola's Corner Store in our neighborhood in the 60s, and have amassed quite a few. And I have a sample card here from every year from 1952 to about 1980. And I also have guides in a rack here that are about the 50s, 60s, 70s, and cards since 1981. I give a little talk about that. The business was deregulated at a time. Topps had a monopoly, and when they lost their monopoly, it changed collecting tremendously. And there are boxes and boxes of Fleer, Score, Donruss, Upper Deck cards from the 80s, 90s up to now that people use for kindling now because they were just overproduced. But the feature in this museum are cards that were collected during the baby boom, starting with the 1952 Topps set. And the first card in that set was Andy Pafko. And Andy, and card number 1, I should say, has a little bit more significance because it usually, if it was in the front of the numbered order, got banged up a little bit. So to find one in real good shape, and I have a reproduction here for 1952, but he was the pride of Boyceville, Wisconsin. He had a 17-year major league career playing for Brooklyn, Chicago, and the Milwaukee Braves, 4-time All-Star. He had family in nearby Bridgman, and he lived the last few years of his life in Bridgman.
Wow.
And I got to take a couple card albums and visit with him a couple times, and spend an hour or so with him each time and flip through the album. And he remarked about every player that was in the album, which was really cool.
Now, was that his actual signature there, or is it?
No, the 52 set featured facsimile signatures of all the players. Yep, sure did. But I have a little story about every person that's featured in this case. In these booklets, and I also have the Fleer cards from 59 to 63, the post serial cards that we used to cut out of the back of post serial boxes, and then I have some players that were has significant ties to this area or just were famous for something else. Don Larsen was born in Michigan City, and he of course pitched a perfect game in the World Series. Matty Alou started his career in Michigan City. Ned Garver, who was a St. Louis Brown, was related to a family here in Three Oaks, and he'd be down the street every once in a while. But card collecting has changed tremendously. It's more of a business now, really. But during the baby boom, this is what we did, and the teams we didn't like, we put them on the spokes of our bicycle with a clothespin.
And I'm saying that they were mostly Yankees in my case, right?
If you're from the Midwest,
Yeah,
generally
yeah.
Yankees. Yep, definitely. Well, shortly after I opened the museum in April, I got an email from a guy that said, "Hey, call me at this number. I want to come to your place." And I looked and I thought, come on. And it was from Denny McLean. And I thought, really? And so I thought about it a while, and I thought, I'm going to ask this guy a question when I call him to see if he really is Denny McLean. And I knew this about him, and I called him and I said, "Do you know Dominic Farina?" And he said, "Why, yes, he married my wife and I in New Buffalo, Michigan in 1963. So I knew I was talking to the right guy because I knew that fact. And Denny, of course, had a couple of fantastic years with the Tigers in 68 and 69 and had a live arm, and things kind of, he wore his arm out really and came to an end. And he is making himself available to go out and speak and sign autographs, and he set a date up with us, and on June 22nd he was here and signed autographs from 10 to noon, and then spoke at the Acorn from 12:30 to 2:30.